Hello, you beautiful persons! So, at the beginning of the year, I thought it'd be a fun idea to track all the games I play. I made a little Google Doc, and anytime I started playing a game, I jotted down. Some old, some new, some not even really games. With the new year happening, recently... God, it takes so long to make videos. I went back through and took a look at all the games I played. And looking through all the games made me think of how much fun it would be to talk about all of them. And it's made me realize how much I actually play that I've just completely forgotten about. Like, I played Time UFO, what? Though I have an absolutely horrible memory and sense of time, so you could tell me Mario Odyssey released 9 years ago and I'd believe you. Obviously I'm exaggerating, that was only like 4 years ago. While tracking the games is all fun and good, I'd also like to talk about the games I played a little bit. Share my thoughts and insights with each game I played. Basically a mini review. And once I'm done talking about them, add a little recommendation reading. But keep in mind some of these I barely played while others I played extensively, so don't take my scores too seriously. And if you are interested in a more in-depth review of any of these games, then just let me know down below. I won't be covering all the games I played, either because I barely played them, they're just a game that I never really stopped playing, or I just don't want to talk about some of them. So I'll only be going over all my highlights, games I played that I feel I have enough to say on and want to talk about. Also because this video will be like 3 times as long if I included every game. I also didn't actually start tracking this until February, so January is just a blur to me. I don't know what happened then. As far as I know, I was abducted and brainwashed. Last thing, I swear. I didn't record all the games I played because I don't want to have a recording software set up every time I play a game. That sounds miserable. So for some of the games, all the footage you'll be seeing will either be from someone else, which I'll put a little tag down here with links to the sources in the description, or it'll just be clips I took on my Switch. With that being said, let's jump into the first game. Starting out with kind of a weird one. I played through a randomizer Soul Link with my friend Adam in Pokemon White. If you don't know, a Soul Link is you and one other person playing through the same Pokemon game, preferably with randomized encounters, at the same time. No Zuck rules are in place, meaning 1 Pokemon per route, no using items in battle, having to nickname all of your Pokemon, and lastly, if one of your Pokemon dies, it's gone for good. The Soul Link part entails every time we encounter a Pokemon, those 2 Pokemon are linked together, so if one dies, then the other dies as well. We also aren't allowed to have 2 of the same primary types on either team, which makes it a little more frustrating. Got all that? Good. With that out of the way, oh my god, the start of this game is awful in a randomizer. You can be killed so easily with literally nothing to do. Way too many Pokemon no Dragon Rage, what the hell? And most of the time it was specifically me who was getting donked over. Adam would be over there frolicking with his fracture or something while my Skiplin would be facing a hydration from youngster Joey. And he had the nerve to say I was throwing! You don't know what I've been through! But eventually we finally had a run where we got past the second gym and it became significantly more manageable. There were some instances where we cheated because we saw a Pokemon we really wanted, but like, who cares? It's not like anyone's gonna know anyways. I remember specifically in Desert Resort, Ad had found a Cofagrigus, one of his favorite Pokemon, and had run out of Pokeballs to catch it. I told him I wouldn't care if he wanted to get more Pokeballs, then tried again because it's one of his favorites. But when he goes back there, Cofagrigus is nowhere to be seen. Through a multitude of encounters, he had not found a single Cofagrigus. I think it took about 3 hours, where he had almost given up on like 4 separate occasions and started going a little crazy, that the Cofagrigus had finally shown back up. I think this is the game's way of punishing him for cheating in a Soul Link or something, I don't know. It was tied to an Altaria I caught, which is a pretty great combo. Sucks Adam ended up killing Cofagrigus at the next gym. We never ended up finishing the Soul Link though. We got to Icarus City, and I think the anxiety and weight of Adam's decision started weighing on him, so we just kinda stopped playing. Yeah, and you're blaming me for losing the beginning runs. Adam. I can't blame him though. The stress of not letting another down in a Soul Link is a lot. The entire run is just pretty stressful. I had a good time with it though, and it made for a super fun experience. The chaos between Adam and I screaming at each other in battles and the bliss we felt when we overcame a challenge together made the entire thing really fun. Just the stress can be a bit much. I'd still recommend it though if you're into Pokemon at all. You do gotta know how the battle system works though, you'll be a little cooked if you don't. This is what we ended up with at the end if you're curious. Every so often I'll pick a random single player game to sink a lot of time into, and at this point I had yet to choose anything for this year, so I thought I'd go back to an old game I hadn't really played since its release, this being Super Mario Odyssey. I remember when the game initially released, I was super excited because it was the first time I had been keeping track of a 3D Mario's release and was a part of all the hype surrounding the game. I mean, the game before this was released 5 years ago, and I was but a measly 9 years old. I didn't even know companies announced games before they release. I just thought they kinda came out spontaneously. And alongside Odyssey, I also got my Nintendo Switch, so the entire vibe and aura around the release of this game was just super joyous for me. I remember my first run-through being some of the most fun I had ever experienced with the game, exploring all the massive kingdoms, collecting all the moons they had hidden, and just interacting with all the fun captures. So considering it has been a little while, I thought it would be fun to go back and see if I can experience some of that magic. The whole plot of this game is Bowser kidnapped Peach again. Who would have thought? You'll land in a mysterious place called the Cap Kingdom, where a little ghostly fellow offers to help you get Peach back since his sister was kidnapped alongside her. So the two of you team up to go get the damsels back. With Cappy's power, you're able to capture enemies and use their abilities to your advantage. Along the way, you'll come across a ship known as the Odyssey that you can take across the world as you chase down Bowser. You also find power moons to power up the Odyssey as you go from kingdom to kingdom. Pretty simple Mario premise, going around and collecting things. Now, I don't know if it's just the fact that this isn't my first time, or how much I've watched other YouTubers rend this game apart, but I just wasn't having a ton of fun. I mean, the game is fun, but it's not nearly the same as when I first played it though. Going into it already knowing all the little secrets and tricks up the game's sleeves just makes the experience so much weaker. On top of trying to get every single power moon being such a slog, honestly. I get there's a lot of options for casuals to have many ways to get through the game, but I have a very completionist mindset and I feel like I need to get everything before I progress, especially in a Mario game. I was hoping once I got to Wooded Kingdom, considering it's my favorite, I'd start getting into the game way more, but once I got there I just lost all motivation. I just didn't really feel like playing it anymore. Maybe if I was better at the movement, or just tried running through the game as fast as possible, I'd have more fun with it. But as it stands, I'd rather keep Mario Odyssey on its pedestal in my memory, instead of forcing myself to go through it again and tarnish it any further. Despite this experience though, it is a super good game. I'm sure you've heard that plenty. If you haven't experienced Mario Odyssey for yourself, I would absolutely recommend it if you're able to. But if you've already been through it before, the replayability just isn't there for me. I don't know if you know about Pikmin, but I like me some Pikmin. Look at them. Yeah. If you don't know what Pikmin is, the whole game is built around a person with an army of little men, and you send those little men to go and complete tasks for you, be it killing things, breaking things, or carrying items back to your ship. If you bring corpses back to your ship, then it'll create more of the little men that you can pick out of the ground. It's Pikmin. The game in question this time is Pikmin 3 Deluxe. I've already played through Pikmin 3 Deluxe twice, and I haven't had any interest in going back and playing the story again. However, something I hadn't done up until this point were the mission modes. There's a set of missions and the extras for this game. One for collecting treasure, one for killing baddies, and another for defeating bosses. I remember trying them initially and just being really bad at them. My Dandori just wasn't there, guys, I'm sorry. I tried them again with a friend after we had played through the story mode together, and we also struggled to get through them. So after that I just wasn't super interested in trying them again. I was content with 100%ing the story mode and moving on to other games. This was until I was hanging with my friend Badwaz, and we were trying to find something to play together. Now, for reference, Badwaz is a big Pikmin fan, and within the past year had gone through every Pikmin game, something I have yet to do. So they had the idea of us cracking open Pikmin 3 Deluxe and trying those mission modes together. I was fearful, of course, considering my past experience, but Badwaz here was basically a Dandori pro. Since my last attempts, I had also 100% Pikmin 4, so I was filled with some new confidence going into this. And we were actually going through all of these pretty well, and they're really fun to do with another person. There is some chaos that comes with miscommunication, but once you figure out a plan with the other person and you see that plan work out, it makes the entire thing super fun. This would actually work really well as a team building exercise. I'm expecting companies to adopt this in the future. There isn't really much to say beyond that though. We did make it a bit more challenging by swearing we would get platinum on every mission, which honestly wasn't that bad. The only mission we really struggled on was the speech level and the treasure collecting set of missions. When we started, we couldn't even beat the timer. I'd say it took us a hearty 20 attempts or so, but once we beat it, we got platinum, which is like, what? How do we go from struggling to clear the mission to clearing it with the highest rank? I don't know. Super fun overall though. If you and a buddy are looking for a chaotic team exercise to do together, I'd suggest these missions. You'll either leave stronger friends, or you'll hate each other. It's all about the gamble. I do not have any intention of clearing these solo though. That idea scares me, and I already have enough fear in my life. Throughout the last couple years, there's been a rise in the genre that many call friend slop. If you do unironically call these games friend slop, then I believe you're a basement dweller with no friends who hate seeing others happier than you. So from here on out, I'll be referring to these as friend merriment games. For legal purposes, this term was coined by Adam. I'd say this genre really started with Lethal Company. It was the first friend-oriented game to really blow up, having a big emphasis on cooperation with a really good proximity chat and a fun replayable premise. I was also a big fan of this game because it is a horror game that you get to play with your friends. How fun! The proximity chat also led to a bunch of funny clips and yada yada yada. I'm sure you've all heard this before. As much as I do love Lethal Company, I played way more of that in 2024. If you don't know about R.E.P.O, you're a little robot called a semi-bot, going to these abandoned buildings to collect goodies for profit, which is what R.E.P.O stands for, Retrieve, Extract, and Profit Operation. Of course, it's not as easy as it sounds, as there are many creatures lurking throughout these forgotten locations. So you gotta go with your teammates to collect all these goodies while trying not to die. Pretty simple. Once you've collected all your goodies, you gotta get the heck out of there. Then you go to a gas station, buy some weapons or upgrades, and you go right back to the next abandoned location. When I first saw R.E.P.O, my immediate thought was that one game with the gun that has eyes and was voiced by the guy who voices Morty in Rick and Morty, and I was just kind of turned off from the game. It's a petty reason, I know, I'm sorry. But in March, I had finally decided to try it out after my friend had egged me on to try it with her. So I played with her and a couple other friends and struggled to understand what I was doing at first. Probably due to the fact that I didn't play the tutorial. So the entire first session I was just pretty confused, but still had a lot of fun with the game. The visual style is very appealing, and the design of the monsters, while being a little goofy, just seemed very macabre, and that enticed me further into the game. The goofy physics engine making transporting goods and working together with your friends is such a chaotic mess, and I love it. On top of a large array of monsters, that makes for some pretty stupid scary interactions. The amount of times I yelped when turning around and seeing the headman or the diddler is way too many to count. And much like Lethal Company before it, I enjoy how the monsters are pretty weak individually, but tend to work together to make for some harder encounters. Putting the monsters aside though, the scariest part of the game has got to be the ambience. Even when there isn't actively a monster chasing you, there's such a thickness in the air that anything could appear around the corner. The sounds that play as you explore really don't help either. This one in particular always gets me. I'm also a big fan of the upgrade system. It's super helpful for making you feel like you're progressing through the game, and it's fun to get a bunch of them stacked up. I'm a big fan of the tumble launch, and when they added tumble wings to the game, I was thriving. And seeing how much the creators are constantly listening to the fans while continuously supporting the game is such a nice thing to see. I love all the update videos they release for the game. I can't even really think of any major complaints I have with the game either. Maybe the fact that monsters become kind of a pushover once you have a ton of upgrades and different weapons. But honestly, with how unseriously my friends and I tend to take the game, we'd never get too far before dying in the stupidest ways possible. I can't even get upset about that though. The highlight of the game is getting to play it with my friends. And regardless of if you become an insanely overpowered god, or make it into a R.E.P.O compilation, the game is just really fun to play with others. So R.E.P.O was one of my favorite games I've played this year because of that. And if you've yet to play it, then I'd highly suggest gathering some of your friends and giving it a shot. And you know, I have made some highlights of me and my friends playing on my gaming channel if you're interested, you know, just putting it out there. So, I was at my friend's house playing Mario Odyssey while they were doing homework. Good old parallel play. And this was the point I got to Wooded Kingdom and just wasn't feeling the game anymore, so I just went screw this, I'm playing Majora's Mask. A brief overview if you don't know already, you're playing as Link, a hero lured here by Skullkid. This little silly Billy is making the moon crash into the land of Termina in 3 days, killing all of its inhabitants. Fortunately for you, you have a magical ocarina your bestie gave you lets you travel back in time. So it's your job to try and save the land of Termina by figuring out the land's secrets, but going back in time through the 3-day cycle when need be. I consider Majora's Mask to be one of my favorite games of all time. It has such a unique and depressing story filled with so many memorable characters and events. There's just so much to it that makes it feel like more than a game. It's a whole experience. Plus, I'm just a fan of the N64 Zelda games. I really enjoy the gameplay in them. This could be because of nostalgia bias though, since Majora's Mask was my first Zelda game, if we don't count the DSi port of Four Swords Adventures. I've only ever played the 3DS remake. Crazy, I know I call it my favorite game when I've only ever played the bad version. So, I decided I was going to finally give the N64 version a shot through the N64 app on my Switch. I had played through the original Ocarina of Time for the first time about 2 years prior, in which I named Link Mommy. So I thought it was only appropriate to name this version of Link But yeah, I really wanted to see why somebody claimed this to be the best way to play the game, since the 3DS version apparently donks so much up. It also been a while since I actually played Majora's Mask, a good 5 years at least. Now moving forward, we're going into spoiler category. If you don't already know about Majora's Mask, then you might want to skip ahead because I'm going to be talking like you already do. Moving on. So after playing through the entire game and 100%ing it a second time, I gotta say between the two versions, I'm really indecisive, which was kind of shocking to me because everyone makes the 3DS version sound like absolute dog doo-doo, but really the differences aren't that big. Everyone always brings up the Zora swimming like it's some game-ruining change, but it's not that bad, guys, calm down. Sure, going fast whenever you'd like is nice, but I also ended up mocking my noggin a lot. I get why they added a slower option in the 3DS version. What does suck is that they lock the fast swimming behind magic use, but it's okay, you'll live. The only big area to swim in is Great Bay anyways, and it's not like there's a ton to do there, it's just mildly annoying to go slow. Unless you're a speedrunner, I guess, I can see why this change is devastating. The only real complaint I think is valid is how much lighter they made the remake. It made the darker and more ominous areas like Great Bay Temple so much more of an eyesore in comparison to the original. In general, I think the 3DS version can be a bit ugly at times with how high the contrast is. The darker colors in the original just fit the game much better in my opinion. Though at the same time, the Southern Swamp in the original was kind of an eyesore, so an eye for an eye, I guess. There's also a lot of quality of life changes I prefer in the 3DS version. Having the Song of Double Time let you pick the hour instead of moving you forward to the next day is so much nicer. And the organization of the Barber's Notebook is significantly better, oh my god. So really, I just think it comes down to which one you grew up with for which you'd prefer more. But if you are new to the game and you're struggling which one to choose because of the feud, I'd personally say the 3DS version. It's way more casual friendly and easier to navigate than the original. But honestly, it won't really matter which one you choose. The fundamental game is still there regardless. The same beautiful story, characters, dungeons, bosses, etc, etc. At the end of the day, they're both Majora's Mask. I will warn you though, if you do look up a guide, be sure to clarify if it's the N64 or 3DS version, because both do have a bunch of minor changes when it comes to collectible locations. But yeah, I love Majora's Mask. I personally wouldn't suggest it if it's your first Zelda. Go play Ocarina of Time or Twilight Princess if you're wanting an authentic first 3D Zelda experience. But if you're a fan of more depressing stories with deeply rich characters and time loops, then I'd strongly recommend Majora's Mask. Like I mentioned at the beginning, I kind of forgot I played this. This was around that time Nintendo had announced they were discontinuing their gold points, and I wanted to use them on something before they were gone. I'm more of a physical game collector anyways, so I wouldn't typically use them regardless, but I can't just let them go to waste. I was struggling for a bit to find something I actually wanted and thought I would play that I didn't already have. But that's when I remembered HAL, the Kirby people, made a little mobile game called Time UFO. Once the game had run its course in mobile, they decided to port it over to the Switch with a bunch of extra little goodies. The game was only $9, and I had about $8 in gold points, so this seemed like the perfect time to try this little gem out. And the game is really cute and fun to play, but it's also very much a mobile game. A bunch of little score-based challenges where you're trying to complete tasks in a certain amount of time to get a good rank. The little UFO you control has a claw to pick things up and move around, sort of like a claw machine. Speaking of the UFO, look at this little cutie. I played it for a bit and had some fun, but I've never been a huge fan of these types of games. Nothing wrong with them, just not for me. Makes you think of Candy Crush. Maybe it's just something that comes with age. But if you're into score-based games like this, then I'd give it a shot. I also like that for the Switch version, they added the option of multiplayer. It's always a fun alternative. The main thing I remember liking is the, motif, I guess, that they use throughout most of the songs. I love it in the museum stage especially. Now this is a big change of pace. I tend to play more stylized, colorful games. I mean, the most we deviated from that so far is R.E.P.O, so this definitely isn't my typical style of game. Not to say that this isn't stylized, of course, just look at what I typically play, you know what I mean! I first played this back in 2022 with my good friend Gunn. Gunn is a massive fan of this game, and wanted to start a campaign with me and a few others since the game is very team-oriented. Playing it alone is like trying to play Mario Party with CPUs. You can definitely do it. It's just kinda sad. We had tried doing a couple campaigns in the past, but they ultimately ended up not going anywhere. We couldn't get people on consistently, and didn't want to progress without them there. But this year Gunn had told me how he really wished there was a way we could do an actual Barrow campaign, and get people on for it consistently. And I agreed, it would be fun. I mean, I enjoyed the little I had played before, and would, God forbid, love to actually reach the end of the game. So I made it my mission to get 5 people together and beat Barotrauma this year. I had gathered 4 of my friends interested in playing. I set up 2 days of the week where we all agreed we would show up, and we would play for about 1 to 3 hours on those nights. And who would have guessed the plan actually worked? Crazy what a little bit of planning can do. There were some rough patches, people not showing up, drama amongst the crew, dates having to shift around, but we managed to make it work, damn it. Let me talk about the actual game for a second though, since I went on a bit of a tangent. In the world of Barotrauma, you're on Jupiter's moon Europa, specifically underneath Europa and its sprawling subsurface ocean. At this point of the story, contact has been cut with Earth and everyone in Europa is slowly dying from lack of resources in an approaching wave of death known as Jovian radiation. You and your crew are just trying to survive in this alien hellscape as you travel Europa's oceans in your submarine. This on top of completing jobs for marks, the game's currency. So we can buy things like weapons, upgrades for a sub, pet food, etc, etc. Everyone has their own specific tasks on the submarine to make sure everything goes smoothly. Mine was the job of an engineer. I went around to make sure none of the electronics were breaking. Sometimes I'd even have to leave the ship to repair broken down stations. I didn't like it. There are things in the water and I was scared. I was personally more a fan of taking care of plants and pets on the ship while making sure everything was functional. It's a very fun mix of teamwork and strategy. No, you can rely on each other to persist through the horrors in the waters of Europa. I honestly didn't help a whole lot with the story and more in-depth parts of the game like political relationships. I left that up to the other four. All I know is f*** the Coalition, Serpentis or base, the church scares me, all hail the Honk Mother. As long as I got to stay on the ship and tend to my babies, then I was good with whatever. When the game really gets going, like when you come across an abyssal creature and your ship is being held up by duct tape in a dream, it can be really fun. That could also be because I really like repairing things in the game though. We did eventually reach the end of the game successfully and beat it on July 28th. Which felt great to accomplish. I won't spoil the end of the game or anything, but my baby at the time managed to survive and I am incredibly proud of him. I don't know if I want to do something like this again because managing to get everyone together and the drama that surrounded it was kind of stressful, but when we did get it to work, the game was super fun to play through with the functional crew. If you have a group of friends you think you'd like to explore Europa with, then I'd highly recommend it. And if this doesn't seem like your type of game or you just don't want to play it, then at least listen to the soundtrack. It's so pretty and atmospheric. During March of this year, there was a Nintendo Direct. Don't know if y'all remember. Kinda a boring Direct. The big new thing was Tomodachi Life, which, you know, I'm beyond thrilled for. But besides that, it was just kinda, yeah. Doing a little reel of some of the indie games though, they showed one called Rift of the Necrodancer. Now, I've always been a big fan of rhythm games. I just love doing actions to the rhythm of songs. I find it satisfying. Unfortunately, most rhythm games just don't really scratch that itch for me. It feels like I'm just pressing buttons while music is playing. My actions don't feel connected to the song. Seeing the gameplay of Rift of the Necrodancer was really enticing though. It just seemed like something that might scratch that itch. I mean, I had played Crypt of the Necrodancer, Cadence of Hyrule, and I did enjoy that, despite being pretty bad at it. So playing a more traditional rhythm game by the same team seemed like it could be a lot of fun. So about 2 days after the Direct, I decided to try the demo they had on PC, as it was free. And I was instantly obsessed with the game. It's so good, oh my god. I had made it through all the songs and played them multiple times until I just decided to buy the full game. Best decision of my life. I love this game. It's one of my favorites now. The gameplay is the main thing though. There's a story, but it's nothing super crazy. Basically, Cadence gets dragged into another world. Love her design on this, by the way. And she has to figure out how to get back to her home. In this world, there's multiple rifts opening, and being that she's a badass and all, she fights these rifts with the power of music. This leads into the gameplay. It's very similar to Guitar Hero, but instead of being little button indicators, there's monsters. Each of the little monsters have different traits. For example, green slimes can be killed in one hit, bats move over in the direction that you hit, being killed on the next beat, or knights dash at you, showing a gleam a beat before they'll attack. Basically, it's a generic rhythm game, but you have to memorize the traits of all the monsters and how to deal with them, and I find it so fun. It just feels so satisfying to know what the monsters are going to do and how to deal with them, and I feel like they match with the music so well. It just all works together so cohesively, it's hard to find words. I'm still not super great at it. I've never been good at rhythm games despite claiming to love them, but that doesn't stop me from trying my hardest. There's also a couple little Rhythm Heaven type games throughout the story that I am awful at. I don't understand the mole one. I swear I'm playing on beat, but it says I'm missing. I think I'm losing it. So if you're a fan of those, then they're there too. Putting the gameplay aside for a moment, the art direction in this game is so good. I love the art style with the varying line thickness, the outside having thicker lines, and the inside having thinner lines. It's so pretty. I've started adapting it into my own art. And all the character designs themselves are just so cool. I'm a big fan of Suzu and Harmony. Design-wise, I am literally her and she is me. We are one and the same. Though I'm not a fan of psychologically manipulating Dove, that is not cool. This game has also had a ton of collabs with other indie games that I've loved seeing. We got games like Celeste, Pizza Tower, Shovel Knight, or even Meat Boy. Hatsune Miku is also here, which is lovely to see. Alongside the songs that they add, we also get art for each of them, which is amazing. And it doesn't seem like they're stopping. They've been consistently doing collabs with other indie studios, and I love seeing it. I am desperately praying for a collaboration with Bug Fables. I will give any amount of money for this, please, I need it. But if you're a fan of rhythm games, or even if you're not, please go check out the free demo. If it's something up your alley, then you won't regret giving it a shot. And if the developers are watching this, can you please give me an option to go back to the old Cadence outfit? I bought the little support pack because I love the game and wanted to support y'all, but I didn't actually care for the jacket, and now I'm stuck with it. Thanks. During a period where I still had Twitter, I was mindlessly doomscrolling when I saw this art someone made of their X and Y team alongside their friends that they played with, and I thought it was super cute. I believe they had done it in preparation for Pokemon ZA, and it had been a while since I played through X and Y, so I thought I should copy their idea. So I got my friends Adam and Hunter and made them play the game with me. By with me, I mean in a call on Discord because Adam lives across the country. It was just going to be a generic playthrough of the games. The only rule we had set is we couldn't pick any of the same Pokemon, so if Hunter had an Aegislash, then Adam and I couldn't have one. We picked our starters and then just started playing through the game while we chatted with each other on call. It's actually really nice, since Pokemon is a pretty slow and monotonous game. Just having people to talk to while you play it is a really nice experience. I mean, I'd suggest it if you're wanting to play through one of the games. It makes it feel like you're going on a journey together in a way. This did remind me of just how easy Pokemon X and Y are though. Going from the difficulty in Black and White to this was staggering to say the least. Unfortunately, when we got to the 6th gym, we just stopped playing. Life got in the way and we haven't been able to find the time to continue, and as it stands now, our playthrough is on hold. But maybe one day you'll see me post an art piece like what originally inspired this. X and Y are some of my favorite games in the series though. I definitely recommend them if you're into Pokemon and haven't played these games yet. Though, Y was my first Pokemon game I beat, so nostalgia bias. Cuphead, notorious for being a difficult 2D boss rush platformer all with hand-drawn assets in the RubberRoss style. A game that I had already beaten. I'm realizing I replayed a lot of games this year. However, BadWas hadn't, so we put up our dukes and tried to get through the entire game. Having already beat Cuphead, I felt like I was already at a very big advantage, with a lot of our attempts having me being the last one standing. But still, some bosses were beating my butt. Those frogs always get me no matter how many times I try to fight them. So there were a lot of times that BadWas actually pulled through and managed to be the last one alive. Of course, the one that we got stuck on the longest was that annoying-ass dragon. Literally the hardest boss in the game. It was the only one we had to step away from the game to take a break for. We got Wendy's before we decided to give it another go. Not a lot to say about Cuphead. I feel like I can't say anything that hasn't already been repeated by others 1,000 times. It's a super pretty stylized game with some hard-ass bosses that leave you feeling accomplished once you beat them. What else is there? I think going through it with a friend is fun. It did take us like a month of on and off playing to get through the entire thing, but I don't really have a lot to say outside of that. My favorite weapon is now the charge gun, I guess, so there's that. Well, in the middle of our Cuphead playthrough, we also decided to start playing Kirby Star Allies. I don't really remember why, but we did, so... Star Allies. Much like Mario Odyssey, this was the first Kirby game I was keeping track of from the moment it was announced. Unlike Mario Odyssey, this game is a little lackluster, though I still had a lot of fun with it. Despite beating it on release day, I continued playing it for a while trying to get every character through the guest star mode and arena, which is very tedious. I did that for about a year before I got sick of doing the same thing over and over again and just stopped playing the game. What I never really did though was try playing the game with a friend. And believe it or not, but this game is kinda all about friendship and making friends, so playing it with a friend is a bit more enjoyable. The level design in the game is much more spacious to be able to hold multiple people, which ends up making a single playthrough just kinda boring. Going through it for my second time with BadWas was pretty fun, though it did make me realize how lame it is that one player is stuck as Kirby throughout the entire playthrough. One of the highlights of the game are the Star Allies, aka the characters from other games that have unique movesets. Kirby is fun and all, but seeing other players get to play whatever they want while you're stuck as the little pink thing and what abilities you can take is just kinda eh. At least in the other modes you can choose what characters to play. BadWas has found a new love for Dark Meta Knight, so there were benefits. I will say that despite definitely enjoying the game more this time with another person, it still just feels kinda lacking as a whole package in general. Especially after playing through a bunch of other games this year that I had previously played in single player. I don't know, it's a Kirby game, I'll deep dive it at some point. There's this little YouTuber you might have heard of called RubberRoss. Was pretty popular in Newgrounds, was part of the Game Grumps, got pretty popular recently from doing collaborative drawing videos. Yeah, that guy. In 2020, he released a Super World to Mario Maker 2. If you don't know what a Super World is, they're a collection of levels strung across a world map, similar to how they are in traditional 2D Mario games. Well, about 3 years ago, two separate small YouTubers you might have heard of, Jaden Animations and AlphaRed, played through the Super World and uploaded their experience to YouTube. The thing that made this video so special is the Super World is not meant for multiplayer. It's very single player oriented. So a lot of the levels broke down at that fact. The video is super entertaining and fun, I'd recommend it. But the point is, my friends Bad Boss and Egg wanted to try that, and instead of going in with 2 players, we went in with 3 players, and oh my god was it awful! You'd think having multiple people would make the levels easier since you're able to cheese them by jumping off each other's heads and throwing each other. However, no! There's a fundamental mechanic in Mario Maker called bubbles. When someone dies, they go into a bubble, and will slowly float towards the closest living player. You can mash A to move faster, but regardless you're going to be moving towards the target. These bubbles are so annoying. They act as obstacles. If you run into one horizontally, then you'll lose all momentum. If you go from the top of one, then you'll be boosted upwards, with the opposite happening if you go from the bottom. Generally, in more generic levels, this wasn't too bad, but in levels that required precision platforming, this was so unbelievably infuriating. Sure, there were some levels we could cheese, but the vast majority had us fighting for our lives. And by us, I mean me! I'm not going to say my friends are bad, because they're not. However, I definitely played more Mario Maker than them and was better at the game. So whenever there was a level that required precision platforming, I was typically the one that would be selected to do so. So I'd not only have to do precision platforming, I'd also have to make sure not to hit these stupid bubbles anytime someone died. It became a game of strategy, waiting for the opportune moment so that the bubbles would be out of the way and I could progress forward. I don't mean to throw my friends under the bus though, there were a lot of times they had carried me through the levels as well, but oh my god, this is not made for multiplayer. I couldn't even imagine doing it with 4 people. The more bubbles, the worse it is. We did start this in May and made it to what I still believe to be one of the worst levels, Rock Bottom, in which we subsequently stopped playing the game for like 4 months. Once we picked it back up, we locked in. We managed to beat it by the beginning of October and can proudly claim that we've conquered RubberRoss's Super World in 3-player multiplayer. We've also sworn to never play this again. I swear, there's a permanent mark engraved into my amygdala that'll make any time I hear the athletic theme from Super Mario Bros. 3 send me spiraling into a traumatic episode. Don't play this in multiplayer. I do have a compilation of all the moments I clipped during this, so if you want to go check that out, feel free. Oh boy, the Nintendo Switch 2 released. You know what that means, discourse. In July of this year, the Nintendo Switch 2 was set free into the world with Mario Kart World releasing alongside it. And you know me, being the little Nintendo slut that I am, I got it on launch day. Didn't even pre-order it or anything, just went into Best Buy like... Y'all have the Nintendo Switch 2?
Yeah, we have plenty actually.
Y'all have the Mario Kart World bundle?
We have a few of those, yeah.
Yay! I got it during a period when some friends were visiting and hanging out in a big get-together, so I left to go and spend $500 only to come back and force everyone to play Mario Kart World. I think that experience of having everyone together playing a new game made the game feel extremely magical at a more memorable time. We had a lot of fun trying out the new gameplay mechanics of wall raiding and rail grinding, finding all the new costumes for the characters, and just seeing how cool the fully connected world was. But, of course, that get-together came to an end, and I was left with just Mario Kart World. And it is so meh. I think having this interconnected world is really cool. I love a lot of the new tracks and reimagining of the old tracks. Personally, I'm a big fan of Dry Bones Burnout. I only refer to this map as Mexico. I'm also a really big fan of the character selection. Having a select cast of main characters and having a wide variety of enemies to pick from is super fun. I've always been a big fan of Mario enemies, and getting the chance to play as them is something I've always wanted. Big fan of Cataquack, I'm a Cataquack main. And of course the music, oh my god! The hundreds of remixes from across the series is not something I was expecting, but I'm definitely not complaining about. Suddenly hearing Space Junk Galaxy while just driving around almost made me burst into tears. I do believe that all the fundamentals to making a great game are here, which sucks was there's so many minor things that just ruin the entire experience for me and many others. One of the biggest glaring issues before the game even released is why is the character select screen set up like this? There's a multitude of new costumes added to the game if you didn't know, and when you unlock these costumes they take up an entire slot in the character roster. Why? Mario Kart 8 already had a workaround for this, having a little drop down for the characters. So why isn't it here? The way you unlock these outfits too is just kinda weird. Why do you have to get these goodie bags with specific locations giving you specific outfits? Having a shop where you could, I don't know, spend the coins you get throughout the entire game would be pretty neat. Don't even get me started on the fact that these outfits are limited to which character you're playing as. I just want a little top hat for my Cataquack, you sick and twisted freaks. And that's just one issue. There's also the problem of not tracking the collectibles you get in free roam, which I do think they fixed in an update, but why was that not in the base game? Also, the issue of online games having a high likelihood that you'll get intermission races, which suck. Me and my homies hate intermission races. There's just so much small stuff like this to make the whole thing feel like doo-doo water. They do keep updating the game though, and every time I see them update, I get a plethora of videos like, did this just fix Mario Kart World? But like, why does the game need to be fixed? This is an $80 product. Granted, I only got it for $50, but still, that's a lot of money going towards a product full of holes. I think the worst part is that a lot of these updates don't even fix all the issues people have. They do the equivalent of putting a band-aid on a gunshot wound. I don't know, it's really easy to be negative, and I don't want to drag down the vibe of the video, but I'm just a bit disappointed with Mario Kart World, which sucks. Like I said, the fundamentals of the game are fun. It's a game that's easy to learn and hard to master, which is a nice change of pace for the franchise. Plus, playing with friends is still a lot of fun regardless of these issues. I just wouldn't recommend spending $80 on something like this, when you could instead buy 5 copies of Kirby's Dream Buffet. Now, there's another big title that came out at the same time as the Nintendo Switch 2, and I have a feeling you already know what I'm talking about. That's right, baby, Nintendo Switch 2 Welcome Tour, an absolute hidden gem. Deltarune, it's Deltarune. Now, there's a lot I could say about Deltarune, but if I spoil absolutely anything about this game for someone that hasn't played it, then I feel like I'm doing a disservice to the world. It's like committing a cardinal sin, but worse, somehow. So go play it, right now. Trust me, it's worth it. I like Sham. Now, this might be cheating a little bit, as I didn't entirely play this game. Bad Boss has been playing through every Sonic game, and considering this is the peak of the entire series, I had to make them play this. And, you know, whenever they weren't playing it on my DS, I would go back to all the levels that they had previously played and try to collect all the red star rings. It would just be something I do to pass the time. DSs are really good for that. Way better than doom scrolling, you should invest. Anyways, I think Sonic Colors DS is peak, and this is totally not because it's the only Sonic game I regularly played and actually beat as a kid. If you didn't know, there were 2 versions of Sonic Colors released when the game originally came out. The Wii version, which ended up getting remade as Sonic Colors Ultimate, and the DS version, which has only ever been released on the DS. It's actually made by the same people that made the Sonic Rush games, and is very much in the same style, reusing assets from the other games. So many consider it to be the 3rd and final game in the Rush series. However, it's the best one because it's space-themed, and oh boy, do I love me some good old space. The only thing that does really suck about this game is the aspect ratio. It is so hard to see where you're going. Sonic is all about speed if you didn't know, and that kinda sucks when the screen only lives 2 feet in front of me. Maybe that's what all 2D Sonic games are like though, I don't know. This is really the only one I've stuck my teeth into. Maybe there's some sort of joy people feel from going into the fog unknowingly. This definitely makes it suck for finding these red star rings though, as it's hard to see anywhere at all the time. I managed to make it to Starlight Carnival, then I gave up, so go play Sonic Colors DS if you're a Sonic fan or a Space fan. It's very fun for either of those autisms. There's also a secret boss in this one that's not in the Wii one, so ooh, jingle jingle jingle. Now, this next game is pretty peak, guys. It's a very peak game. It's peak. The game's peak. Guess what, my lovelies? It's another friend merriment game. This is what I consider to be the other big game that released this year with the friend merriment genre alongside R.E.P.O. However, for once we have something that's not a horror game. For the most part. This one is all about climbing a mountain. You and 0 to 3 other people have crash landed on a deserted island and have to make it to the peak, in hopes of finding help. You have a little stamina bar down here that goes down whenever you're doing physical activities, namely climbing. It'll go down naturally over time from hunger, which can be replenished with food throughout your climb. It'll also go down from other things like poison, damage, ice, fire, or black magic. And that's the game. Try to make it up to the top and don't die along the way. And remember, always help a scout in need. I like Peak a lot. It's way more team-oriented than R.E.P.O, I feel like. Of course, you're meant to work as a team in both games, but in R.E.P.O you can just kind of wander off if you feel like it and do your own thing till you have to meet back up at the end. You could also do the same in Peak, but you probably won't like what happens if you do. There's also way more ways to actually help your friends in Peak. Things like reaching your hand out to help each other up, carrying someone if they get knocked out, or just the option to give each other items unwillingly. This isn't to say R.E.P.O is worse than Peak or anything. I think both are equally great and we shouldn't be throwing them into a pit fight. Much like R.E.P.O, Peak is constantly updating their game and listening to feedback from the fans. Since the game release, 2 whole new biomes have been added, both being a blast to go through, alongside some new items that make exploration easier. Or harder. It's just so fun and refreshing to see another studio actually listening to feedback and constantly working towards making the game better to the best of their abilities. Someone in the room with us should learn a thing or two. But, much like R.E.P.O, if you haven't already, I'd recommend gathering a group of friends and playing Peak, as it's a joy to play. Some of the most fun I've had with my friends. And you know, I have another video here highlighting a session if you're interested, just putting it out there. Just couldn't get enough of good old Cuphead. Despite beating the main game in the past, I had never touched the DLC. The DLC just wasn't out when I beat the original, and I had no desire to go back and play the DLC once it had come out. But after Bad Boss and I beat the main game, we thought it would be fun to give the DLC a shot. The premise this time was that Chalice has found a cookie that lets her steal the soul of whoever eats it to reappear in the mortal plane. Kinda wild, but pop off, queen. She takes Cuphead and Mugman to a new Inkwell Isle to meet Chef Saltbaker, who can supposedly make a wonder tart that will give Chalice a permanent physical existence. So you're tasked with going around the isle and gathering ingredients for the fabled wonder tart. The main feature of the DLC is the introduction of Chalice as a playable character. If you go into your loadout, you're able to equip the cookie, which lets you play as Chalice whenever you're in a battle. She plays very differently than Cuphead and Mugman, having a built-in dodge roll and double jump. Her parry is also attached to her dash instead of her jump. All of these buffs are to account for the fact that you can't equip other charms with her. It's hard to get used to this, but once you do, it's very fun to play. I honestly prefer her over Cuphead or Mugman. One major downside of playing with a friend is that only one of you can be Chalice at a time though. And all the bosses do work with both playstyles, but you can definitely tell they were intended for Chalice. So while I was having the time of my life, Bad Boss was fighting for theirs. Outside of that, the DLC is much shorter than the main game, but still feels pretty lengthy with how difficult a lot of the bosses are. Especially the cow. The cow. Made us stop playing the game for like 2 weeks. The dogfight is also a doozy with how much it flips the screen around, leading to me and Bad Boss playing like this for most of the fight. The introductions and new weapons does help though. I'm a big fan of this twist up. Though I mostly kept my spread and charge combo. The new accessories added were also cool, but it sounded like I could use them, so I can't really speak on them. All the chest puzzles were also really fun, though some were tedious. Especially the night. I was stressing by the end of it and praying I didn't slip up so I wouldn't have to start it all over again. But I like the parry challenges a lot. It's a fun gameplay switch up to take a break from the more stressful generic bosses. Reminds me of the Mausoleums, but more in depth. We did eventually make it to Saltbaker though. And his first phase was driving us bazonkers. There's just so much junk to keep track of, with a lot of it overlapping with each other in the perfect manner. It also just lasts so long. It took us a couple sessions, but it was very satisfying once we reached the end. Not only to say that we beat Saltbaker, but also that we beat all of Cuphead. The entire DLC is definitely delicious though. I'd highly recommend it if you're a fan of the base Cuphead. On August 28th of this year, the DLC for Forgotten Land was released, with what I believe is the first paid DLC for any mainline Kirby game. The premise is a giant meteorite has fallen to Popstar, and while entering the atmosphere broke into a bunch of pieces. Apparently this is some old eldritch horror spoken of in myths, so it's our job to go find these stars that are keeping this catastrophe sealed away. The stars really just function as replacements for the waddle-dees you find throughout levels. That's the DLC's main thing though. It added a bunch of new levels to the game, with the primary gimmick being these little starry flowers that would lead you along different paths through old levels. And I gotta say, this was a little underwhelming. I love Forgotten Land and was super excited to hear there would be new content added to the game, and I was expecting quite a bit since it was $20. I mean, that's the price of Kirby Dream Buffet and Polydiki car cleaning, gel detailing, putty, auto detail, tools, car interior, cleaner, slime car, accessories, Christmas stocking stuffers for men, women, teens, white elephant gifts, adults. Though some of that price might be due to them charging for the enhanced Switch 2 version, which I personally think is stupid, but oh well. But even putting that aside, it was just kinda disappointing. There are 12 new levels, 2 for each world, and while they are super fun to go through, they don't really add anything new. Like I said before, you're going on new paths through old levels, so all the themes are the same. The only time I feel like they really shook this up was in the level Ever Bay Coast, where the sea is parted and you get to run along the ocean floor. Outside of that, it just kind of feels like an extension of levels that we already had, which, again, they're fun. I was just kind of hoping for more. But there's also like almost zero new enemies or bosses. The only new enemy we get are these guys named Galactals. They're a neat enemy that are pretty fun to fight, but being the only new enemy is kind of lame. And they end up getting used a lot throughout the DLC and become pretty annoying because of that. And no, I don't count the enemies that already existed with Crystal Tumors as new enemies. I was at the very least hoping for a couple new bosses. The starry aesthetic is super pretty and would make for some really interesting boss designs. But alas, there is only one new boss. That being a redesign of the final boss, which we already had in the base game. I will at least admit that this fight is cool as hell, but I'm still upset that this is all that we got for bosses. I mean, just add Galactonite! Sure, it would basically just be redesigning the Morphle Knight and Meta Knight fights, but at least it would have been cool to see him in 3D. Another thing I think would have helped this DLC is adding some new abilities. The base game had a pretty good amount for the series' first delve into 3D, but left me wondering how other abilities could have been adapted, and I thought the DLC would be a great opportunity to add at least 1 or 2 new abilities. But we got nothing, not even a new upgrade to any of the current abilities. The most we get in this regard is 2 new mouthful modes, which I gotta admit, they're both really fun, but left more to be desired. For me at least. I'm not meaning to sound too negative, it's just easy to hone in on the negative parts. The content that was added is really good and polished. Running through the new levels, even if the rehashes, are still just as fun as they were in the base game. I had a blast with it. And I'm not saying they should have made a full new game for $20, I just wish there was a little more. I mean, the original game came out 3 years ago, is this all that they've been working on? I don't know, I'm not a game developer. Maybe this amount of content makes sense for 3 years. If you're a Kirby fan, or just a fan of Forgotten Land, I definitely recommend this though, it's still very fun. If not, then I don't think it's worth it, it's just more Forgotten Land. So the secret song you unlock if you 100% everything is Peak, go listen to it. You know, there's something else that released for $20 near this time that I put significantly more time in than the Forgotten Land DLC. The myth, the legend, no one thought it would happen, but here we are. Hollow Knight Silksong. One of the most anticipated games of all time. I mean, the amount of hype around the release of this game was kinda crazy. Anytime any sort of gaming presentation would happen around this time, people would go,
Silksong?
I mean, it kinda makes sense. Hollow Knight was extremely well received. I mean, I consider it one of my favorite games of all time. And when they announced that the DLC where you play as Hornet would instead be turned into an entirely new game, the hype around it just exploded. Coupled with the fact that the team would rarely ever share any information about the game, people were left to fester with the idea that the game is still coming, but with no idea of when that day would actually come. The hype that people had spread like a plague. The game's existence just spread through word of mouth, growing larger and larger every day. Until finally, September 5th, 2025, the day Silksong was released. In the game, you're playing as Hornet. You've been kidnapped and are taken to a mysterious kingdom known as Farloom. Once you arrive in the kingdom, Hornet starts silking all over the place, causing you to fall into the Moss Grotto. This is where the game starts. Hornet wants to discover why she was taken to this kingdom, so you make your trek up to the Citadel. One of my favorite parts of this game is that you're climbing up the kingdom instead of going downwards. I find it very fun. Much like the game, the whole experience is just a blast. I mean, I typically struggle to play games for more than 2 to 3 hours at a time consecutively, but I literally couldn't put this game down. It was addicting. The controls feel wonderful, and I think all the new gameplay mechanics feel so fresh while still feeling very similar to Hollow Knight. On top of the crest system, there's just so many ways to approach the game at a fundamental level, that isn't even touching on all the different tools. Though, around the time of its release, the game's difficulty was definitely brought into question, many people saying it's too hard, and when I was playing through it, I kind of agreed. Not because I found it too hard, but I hated seeing so many people give up on the game because they couldn't progress through it. That's not me saying the game isn't hard though, you definitely need to play through Hollow Knight first, that entire game is like a tutorial for Silksong. But I never found it hard to the point that I wanted to scream and give up on the entire game. Well, except for one area, you know which one. But things like the Moorwing or the Last Judge were certainly challenging, but weren't game enders for me. I initially thought having an easy mode for the game would be a nice accessibility option, but now that I've gone through the entire game and it's been a while since release, all I can really say is... I don't want to say too much about the game itself, because this is one of the games that I believe you should experience on your own, but I thought I'd at least share some of my thoughts on it. 10,000%, go play it. Mario Kart World was just an appetizer. The real racing game of this year hasn't come out yet, but we do have Sonic CrossWorlds. Now, I don't technically own this game, Bad Boss does, but being the Sonic fan they got the game on release, and I played through all the Grand Prix with them that same day. On top of us playing it together almost every time we hang out. So I've definitely dabbled in Sonic CrossWorlds. And it's actually really fun. I've always been a Mario farter, but as a kid I did also play Sonic All-Stars Racing on the DS, so I thought it would be something like that. It's not. The original All-Stars Racing is just a Mario Kart clone, whereas Sonic CrossWorlds is very much its own thing. Of course, there are similarities, you get items and such to try and make it to the front, but the way the game handles and all the little extra mechanics make it pretty unique. The main gimmick in this one is in the name of the game, the CrossWorlds. During the first lap of each race, you'll eventually come across a crossroads that will lead to a cross world. Whoever's in the front at the time will get to pick which one you're going to, being a set track or a random one. The entire second lap of each race will take place in the crossworld track. Some are original, while the majority are locations from other games. Once you beat all the Grand Prix, every other track will start appearing in these as well. I find these super fun as they keep every race feeling unique. You never know which crossworld you'll be going through. Coming from exclusively playing Mario Kart, it was pretty hard to get used to. The fact you can change directions while drifting was throwing me off a whole lot. The controls in the water are also just kind of annoying, but once you get used to how it plays, the game feels really fun to play. I especially like tricking. I always have the little stat modifier so I trick faster. I don't know if it actually helps, but it makes me feel cool. I think items work way more cohesively too. In Mario Kart, they've gotten to a point where they feel very balanced and fair, which is good. In CrossWorlds, they're chaotic as balls though, which makes for a much better party game kart racer in my opinion. It reminds me a lot of Mario Kart Wii, and that's my second favorite Mario Kart game for that reason. Another thing I feel this game has over Mario Kart is the amount of charm. All the little character interactions are so cute. If you haven't played, every Grand Prix will give you a rival at random. You can change these to other characters, but the point is that there's a rival. Depending on what character you choose, the two will have an interaction that fits their characters, and it's really cute. There's also 2 interactions with every character, going both ways. There's 23 characters in the main roster for the game, meaning there's 529 unique interactions. That's crazy! Though, when I looked up a video of the interactions, it says there's 552 of them, so I don't know where the extra 23 are coming from, but regardless, crazy. Of course, a lot of these aren't that in-depth, but the fact that there's so many unique sets of dialogue is just wild to me. There's also unique dialogue that plays whenever you hit your rival depending on what character you play, so I know there are 529 of those too. It explains why the DLC characters don't have voice acting, that would just add more to the multiplayer, though it's heartbreaking that we don't get to see SpongeBob and Joker have any interactions. On top of this, some characters will also respond to things depending on the track, like how Tails or Eggman will make specific comments when you play as them on Doppler Factory. Silver specifically makes a reference to him and Blaze having visited Sweet Mountain in Colors DS, so as far as I'm concerned, this is a 10 out of 10 game. It's just so cute with so much care being put into every interaction. It helps it feel super alive too. The entire game just feels lived in, despite the crowds being full of duty chows. I haven't even mentioned how cool the car customization is. There's so many ways to make a vehicle tailored for you specifically. I mean, I haven't really dabbled in this since, again, I don't own the game, but being able to play as Metal Sonic on the Miku board is all I really need anyways. There's also the kits you can set up that change how you play the game entirely, with so many different build options being available. I'm personally a fan of having fast air tricks, not losing my items when I'm attacked, and having a lot of items to assault people with. There are some problems I have with the game in terms of just pure gameplay, but with how much love is put into the presentation of this game, it's not too hard to look past some jank every now and again. So I'd recommend it, especially if you're into Sonic at all. It really feels like a big love letter to all the fans. And if you're not, it's still just one hell of a fun kart racer.
It's time for the moment you've been waiting for. Da diddle da 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 diddle da 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 diddle da 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 diddle da 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 diddle da 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 diddle da 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 diddle da 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 diddle da 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 Preparing Kirby Air Riders.
Kirby Air Riders released November 20th of this year, and it's absolutely peak! I don't even know where to start. I'll say that I never played the original Air Ride, besides like 3 rounds of City Trial and 2 rounds of Air Ride with add-in before we gave up due to issues. But I never really sunk my teeth into it, you know? So this is my first time really understanding all the hype around Air Ride. I, of course, did play the demo network test thing, and I gotta say it's so weird that it was only open for like 6 hours at a time, then it would be closed for a while, and it was only open on weekends specifically. I don't know why they didn't just keep it open all throughout the weekend, but whatever. Reminds me how they did Salmon Run in Splatoon 2. Once the game actually came out though, I was playing it for hours at a time. Remember that thing I said about not being able to stop playing Silksong? Yeah, that applies here too. The primary gimmick of the original game was that you only needed to use 1 button, and in the sequel it is now 2 buttons. Whoa, Sakurai, calm down. I don't think the gaming community is ready for that. You'll automatically accelerate and use the B, or like half of the other buttons, to brake, filling up this boost meter and allowing you to drift. The new button in this game is for the special. As you play and attack enemies, this little gauge will fill up and let you use your special. This will depend on which character you're playing as, each having their own unique special. Speaking of which, there are a lot of new characters in this game compared to the first game, which would be because the first game only had Kirby, Meta Knight, and DDD. This time we've got 21 unique characters, with some, questionable choices. Like, I love seeing characters like Lilolo, Lalala, Daroach, Rick, etc. show up here, but Cappy, Rocky, Starman? He's my main, by the way. I'm actually a fan of Goofy picks. That was one of my highlights of Mario Kart World. But much like Mario Kart World, I feel like we're missing some better picks, honestly. Like, where the hell is Effelin? Adeline? Ribbon? I love that Ricky's here, and I'm honestly fine with Q and Kind being stage elements, But where the hell are my goats, Nago, and Pitch? Choo-choo-choo, I guess. Like, I believe the amount of characters we got is really good, and I'm happy with what we have, but choosing Scarfy over any of the other characters I mentioned is crazy to me. I know you said there wouldn't be any DLC, Sakurai, but if you can maybe squeeze Evelyn in there, I really wouldn't be complaining, you know? Jokes aside, this game is packed to the brim with content. The 3 original modes are back: Air Ride, Top Ride, and City Trial. Air Ride is your typical racing mode, with some absolutely jaw-droppingly beautiful tracks, on top of all the original tracks coming back with visual upgrades. There are only 18 tracks, which may seem small compared to something like Mario Kart, but maybe you should stop comparing it to Mario Kart. The 9 new ones we have are all extremely unique and fun to learn to race through. I've gone through them multiple times and still don't know everything about them, since you go through them so fast, it's kind of hard to keep track of what's happening. We also have Top Ride. It's alright. You can tell that they did the most they could with this idea, but it's fun for a game or two, but I just can't get into it. The whole gimmick is it's top down. That's about it. There's a bunch of items I gotta run the track to give you the advantage, which is pretty fun, but I still consider it the weakest mode. Now, of course, which mode really takes the cake is City Trial. If you don't know how it works, you're plopped into the city with a weak machine called the Compact Star, and from there you have to go around the city, finding new machines and upgrades to make your machine more powerful. Things like top speed, defense, flight, offense, that sort of thing. The best place to find these items are in blue boxes, but there are also a multitude of events that will help you get more items or will do the opposite. You can also murder people and steal their items. This whole sequence at default lasts for 5 minutes, and once that's over you get to participate in a stadium. If you're playing locally or with less than 9 people, then you'll vote on which stadium you want to participate in. If you're playing with more than 9 people, then regardless of what you choose, you'll be participating in it. These range from things like combat, to flight, to racing, all to test the build you made with your vehicle. That's just the premise though, and it is incredibly fun and addicting. The option to play locally is great, but having online is a whole different beast that leads to so many fun games. That's just what the game is, to be honest. It's just fun. If you're going into the game taking it super seriously, then you're not playing it right. The game is a chaotic, cohesive mess that's best played when you're not taking it too seriously. Also, Krakow is here, and that's why it's the best mode, thank you. There is also the Road Trip mode, which is a single-player roguelike experience. I don't really want to delve into that here, but it is really fun. It introduces some bosses which are a blast. I mean, 02 is back, I couldn't really ask for more. But I'm going to anyways, I do kind of wish there were more bosses. But oh well, I'm never satisfied. My hunger is unquenchable. It is really nice to have a game like this though. A game that actually feels worth the price to me. I mean, the devs poured their hearts and soul into the game, and you can tell with all the little details all throughout the game. I mean, I didn't even mention the custom machines or hats. It's just kind of Sakurai's specialty at this point. If he's directing a game, then it's going to be crammed full of details to make it feel alive. Even despite some issues I have with the game, it's just such a lovely experience all around. And at the end of the day, it's just a fun game to play. This is a must-have if you want to Switch to. Lastly, we have the most recent game I've played at the time of writing. You want to take a guess at what it is? Go on, take a guess. I'm sure you'll get it. Just take a look back at all the games I've talked about and try to think of something that I would play. You got your vote? Good. Well, you're wrong! It's Nuclear Nightmare! This is another game my friend Gunn really wanted me to play. He has a very specific type of game he likes, which is completely opposite of mine. It's great. This is the game I put under the friend merriment genre of game though. You and a group of friends spawn on a plane in full hazmat suits. Where you go is dependent on the map, but regardless it's some remote region of the world coated in snow and devoid of life. Besides some oopies. You can find Jerky and tame them and they'll help you out. You're sent here to retrieve classified information on the newly uncovered Black Goo virus. It's your run-of-the-mill mutate people and animals into zombie-like grotesque horrors. During the day you're relatively safe, but at night more mutations come out and try to kill you. So you have to gather supplies and try to survive during the nights while going from base to base to find enough classified information. The more you collect, the more in-game currency you'll get if you successfully escape. I think this is a pretty generic gameplay loop, but still a fun one nonetheless. What makes it really differ though is what the game brings to the table in terms of items and monsters, and I gotta say, it's kinda lacking. As far as items go, it's all pretty generic. You got your guns and grenades for weapons, pain relievers for healing, flashlights, yada yada. One of my favorite things to do was reactivating these mines and seeing monsters randomly blow up throughout the night. Though there is a mechanic in the game of getting infected that I find really neat. If you get attacked by a monster, then you will have a chance to become infected, which can only be stopped by finding a vaccine. There are also multiple spots set up to test to see if you're infected or not in exchange for a little bit of damage. The only real complaint I have with this is not knowing when you're going to die from infection. There's not that many indicators, you just kind of spontaneously turn into a monster and start attacking your friends, which blows a bit. It also happens pretty fast from what I've seen. Though depending on your lobby settings, there is a chance for a player to turn into a playable monster when they die, which I find super fun. You start as this little spider-like critter that's really fast without the ability to attack. If you get far enough away from other players, you'll get to evolve though, giving you the chance to turn on your teammates. Can you tell this is inspired by the thing? I think this is amazing though, and one of the best parts of the game. The fact you have to get away from your friends in order to attack is a really nice addition that does balance the mechanic. I also love things in games that allow players to keep playing after they've already died. Keeps it engaging. The only real downside is I'm not a fan of how the monster attacks. You do this slow sweeping attack, then you have to go elsewhere and sit down for a second, I think? It doesn't really elaborate on what's going on that well. I wish there was some sort of display that would show when you can attack, on top of possibly adding a better method of attacking. I'd imagine it's hard to find a balance between making players as monsters viable while not making it too difficult for the living players. But the way it's set up currently just feels kind of awkward. There's also a bunch of vehicles in the game, and by a bunch I mean 3. There's snowmobiles, these things that I think are called polar exploration machines, and helicopters. I only know how to drive one of these. These are primarily helpful in the Antarctica map as all the locations are very spread out, so a lot of traveling is involved. I don't even think helicopters or PEMs are in the other maps. Though the fact that these can hold multiple people is one of the best features in my opinion, as it plays really well into the multiplayer aspect. Though there's a type of enemy that can just snatch you out of them, and I don't like that. The main complaint I have with these is not knowing when they're low on fuel. Throughout the map there's multiple refueling stations, or canisters you can fill with gasoline. Actually telling when the machines are low on fuel though, namely the snowmobiles, just isn't a thing. None of these meters really display the fuel gauge, and I find it really annoying. Last thing I wanted to touch on, the nights last for way too long. There's very sparse amounts of ammo, so it's not the wisest to go out and try to get classified information during the night. The best bet is to bunker up in a building and wait for the day half of the time. This would be fine if the nights didn't last for 12 minutes. It's just very boring. It got to the point that Adam and I just... B5?
Damn it! Go fish.
I know I'm being pretty negative, but I say all this in good faith as I'd love to see the game continue to improve. I find the gameplay loop really fun, and all the sessions I've had with my friends have mostly been a blast. There's just some small issues that make it hard to want to go back and play as much as I've played games like R.E.P.O or Peak. The game did recently go through a major revitalization though, and while I hadn't seen the previous version, I do think the current version has a lot of potential for growth, and I hope to see more from it in the future. Heck, I didn't even touch on some of the more in-depth mechanics like the soda machine. But this isn't meant to be a full review of Nuclear Nightmare. If you're into this more grungy style game and are looking for something new to play with your friends, then I'd say this is worth a shot. I figure I've dragged this video on long enough though, so let's finish this off. Well, that was a lot of yapping, huh? I just really enjoyed a lot of the games I played this year, so thank you for listening to me talk about them. I will say my perspective on gaming as a whole has changed a lot since the beginning of the year. I started out being a bit of a Nintendo schmutz. They were my ride or die, and I would follow and support all of their decisions. The announcement and release of the Switch 2 changed everything, though. All the discourse and anger around the console gave me a heaping pile of new perspectives. So many people outraged by the pricing, with many others being quick to jump alongside Nintendo and defend them. I, of course, was on the latter boat. But as time has gone on, the greed being perpetuated by Nintendo has become abundantly clear to me. So many actions and decisions are just not meant for us. Things like generally overcharging for their products, holding back content to release later as overpriced DLC, or just the decision to crack down on many fan projects. The whole game has been changed into primarily focusing on making profit. And admittedly it has been for a while, but my rose-tinted glasses have only come off recently. Nintendo has built up their name as a trustworthy company, and those unaware, whether willingly or unwillingly, just follow suit. It's not entirely Nintendo at fault though, the entire gaming industry is very much the same. So many AAA studios have gotten so money hungry, whether it be to appease shareholders or just a fleeting attempt to try and keep up with their constantly crumbling economy. The future is looking dark for the larger gaming scope, and it sucks to see. However, there is at least a little glimmer in the dark. Indie games. Games that are made for fans by fans. I've played so many amazing indie games this year that have so much more heart and soul than just about any of the new releases I've played. They're made by the same people as us, those who played so many influential games as a kid, ones who had been inspired by those and brought their own ideas into reality. Things like Rise of the Necrodancer, Deltarune, R.E.P.O, etc, etc. With so many other upcoming indie games that look extremely promising on the horizon. Not to mention the impact Silksong made by being a game with an extremely long development time that was only marketed for $20. I can't articulate just how insane that is. I'm also just a fan of taking a look back at older games. You don't have to be fully focused on what's fresh. There's so many amazing experiences that already exist and have existed for years just waiting for people to play them. As time has gone on, I find myself playing new games as soon as they release less and less. I get more joy from doing things at my own pace. The strain of trying to keep up with everything would just lead to you not fully enjoying the product that's being presented to you. But also finding ways to play old games can be pretty annoying, so I get it. But like, if you really want to play old games, you can find ways. You know, maybe you just need to find an old game you and some friends already enjoy and find ways to make it feel fresh. Something like the Soul Link add-in and I did, or just playing through a game at the same time like Me Hunter and Adam did. We live in a world full of individualism and dichotomy. Please go find ways to do things with others. To summarize, go support indie games, find older experiences for you to experience for the first time, or just ask some friends to play some games with you. I love you all, stay safe, see you next year.
Yeah, we have plenty, actually.
Yeah, I had that little bundle. What the